Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. This is your host, Young Brando, live from Long Beach, California. We have a little bit of a different environment today. I hope you enjoyed our feline visitor. We're going to talk about watches as always, and we are going to look at some auction results, maybe talk about a few new releases that's possible. But most importantly, we're going to talk about new Rolex. Rolex apparently just released a new day date, or rather, a new dial for the day date in connection with the Academy Awards. Of course, Rolex has been a sponsor of the Academy Awards, a long standing supporter of the movie industry at large. And you guys know they have this beautiful green room in the back where they also tend to display historically significant pieces too. I remember last year, I think, or was it from a couple of years back, when they had Paul Newman Daytona on display in the Rolex green room. The pieces on display now at the Academy Award Museum in either case. And before that, it was for a while loaned to the Peterson Automotive Museum. Trying to see where. Let's take a look at the. Hey, Bruce G, how are you doing, man? Yeah, I needed that haircut. You're saying it in the nice way. But genuinely, I needed that haircut. This is apparently how the green room looked like. Of course, there's lots of green. And as you guys know, Rolex started kind of taking the abstract form of the fluted design, the fluted motif, the fluted decorations as an element in the design of their boutiques and authorized dealers and similar kind of spaces for the Rolex experience. And you can see that the walls have the kind of fluting you would see on the bezels and even the dials of Datejusts and day dates. I wonder what this watch was right here in the case. I'm sure that had some historical significance too. I don't know if it came up in any of the industry news. I'd love to see it. Maybe it was this new day date that they introduced that was in the case in the room. Yeah, speaking of that, let's see where that piece actually is. Hmm. Yes. So that was, in the last scene, as you saw, a new dial that was introduced. I think here's a still picture. I hope my voice is coming loud and clear, and not too loud. It's called a slate ombre dial, o- o- uh, in a kind of smoky fashion, kind of a gradient sunburst finish that starts with silver at the middle, like emanating from the hand stack, and of course it is black at the edges. I like it, honestly. I like this kind of gray, shades of gray, as it contrasts with pink gold. it, it does remind me, in terms of the color configuration, of the pink gold 16202, the AP Royal Oak that was introduced in the 50th anniversary, and of course still very much part of the lineup, the 16202 OR. And it's almost undeniable, right? They kind of all copy and paste from each other sometimes when it comes to certain ideas, or perhaps it is in the water of a certain region of Switzerland that these things come as trends, as fads that everyone follows until the next one comes along. But I was quite literally reminded of this particular colorway that was introduced for the Royal Oak Jumbo with the new 16202 reference. And it has, again, this sort of smoked gray dial with, of course, in this case, the traditional petite tapisserie pattern that goes with the jumbo. Whereas, of course, with Rolex, you have the day dates that goes with like a sunburst gray dial. That goes with the Averrose or pink gold. By the way, thank you again, JB. I got your message through Instagram, um, and the news that your gift arrived. I still, as you can see, still have not made it home, made it to my place. So I will have to wear that AP shirt, I think, for tomorrow's live. Probably I'll be wearing that. But yeah, we don't yet have this particular dial for configuration or anything on Rolex's own website. At least I can't tell. I like the way that they honor Scorsese like that, who most recently, at least on public occasions, keeps wearing his day dates, even as he remains a big fan of the 50th anniversary Submariner, of course, in private life and on the set, especially, which is something that I documented on Instagram multiple times. But yeah, just to double check again, when you go to day dates and configure, I had checked the 40 millimeters, so let's double check with 36. But I would think that it's. Hey, Captain Kirk. Yeah, we're not always um, as frequent with the live streams recently, but they have been coming back about 3-4 times a week, as you guys know, and hopefully by the time we reach May, that will be quite consistent at 4 plus. And some of you may have seen the schedule already. The professor, El Famoso Profesor, is coming back on Wednesday when we will talk about the state of the watch market, particularly through the seventh annual Swiss Watcher report by Morgan Stanley, which I think gives us um, this maybe entrenchment of the new normal that we have been talking about. We will come back to elaborate on how some of the makers respond to this new normal, respond to this downturn in the market that has been alternatively called a correction or a crash, as I insist on terming it. That is Wednesday's topic, so I'm not going to belabor the point much. I'll just share with you the link that's going to be actually an earlier live stream. It will be 12 p.m. for my time, Pacific Daylight Savings Time, and 7 p.m. for London, of course, 3 for the East Coast. So please feel free to save the link, hit the like in advance. That would be very much appreciated. So I was saying that Scorsese has been in public wearing his Rolex pieces, of course, as an ambassador. That's what you would expect. He was wearing this white gold piece for the last few times. Whenever he is giving an interview or attending an award show, it's usually his choice, one of his day dates at least, not always, something in white gold, sometimes platinum. This, I believe, may have been actually the platinum with a white dial, but who knows? He certainly has the kind of access that allows him to change it up once every so often. But his personal favorites, as it were, is this one. This is from the set of The Killers of the Flower Moon, where he was wearing the 50th anniversary Submariner, the Kermit, as it's sometimes affectionately called, reference 16610LV. And I think that was also a picture from a few years ago when he was on the set of The Irishman. I'm just going to send those links to the chat as well if you're interested in looking at the pictures on Instagram yourself, hitting the like and sending.
You want to suck my dick, motherfucker?
Comments my way too.
Fuck
if you
you,
would.
bitch ass nigga. Bitch ass motherfucker.
Someone is in the background.
Man, fuck you, nigga.
Who are you?
You want to suck my dick, nigga?
I
You
can't
want to suck
hear you.
my dick?
Okay. Sorry, I'm not interested in that. I've already had my dinner. Too bad that you have to hide in your little hole. You'll have to crawl back there and enjoy your alone time. There we have the one at the LA Times interview where he was wearing the platinum day date. No worries, Captain. These people are, I don't know. I mean, it's not even these people. I know exactly who they are. I know their total number. I know their connections. I roughly know the neighborhood they live in. The open address is not something I have, nor will I share it, of course. That would encourage someone to hurt them. And we wouldn't want that, would we? Of course, I was obsessed with a lot of the watches that people have been wearing around in this award season, but the last few days I had a little bit of repetition. As you guys know, this is actually one of the stills that I captured. I think it must be from the 4th season of The Sopranos, and of course, it is the 25th anniversary. And hopefully, St. Peter and I are going to have the chance to present you an episode where we talk about some of the interesting watches at the Sopranos, what Uncle June wore, what Tony Soprano wore, of course, what um, Chris Moltisanti wore, and right here, what Meadow Soprano, what Jamie Lynn Sigler as Meadow Soprano wore. And in many ways, they were ahead of the curve. They were on the vanguard, so to speak, because a lot of the trends nowadays have genuinely shifted over to a much flashier, much showier, much more jewelry-like aesthetic. And it kind of goes against the grain. I know my friend Oz has been saying that usually recessions and economic crises are followed by a moderation in tastes. You know, the more usual muted colors, um, the simpler, more minimalistic, and even less colorful watch choices might follow. I think things have changed a little bit. I mean, look at all these uh, trends that have been picking up on the 25th anniversary of The Sopranos, like the mob aesthetic or the mob wife aesthetic, as they call. And this is actually one of the pieces that were introduced as part of the Daytona Beach collection. You guys will remember it was 4 different. Um, hey, look, I can't give you the episode away, Gampers, can I? This was one of the pieces introduced as part of the Daytona Beach collection. Um, the 4-piece set, white gold examples of the 6-digit reference 116519, thus with quite colorful dials and with, in fact, elements of presentation that echoed with the choice of color on those dials. In this case, for example, Meadow Soprano's watch has a pink tinted mother of pearl dial, which is matched by a lizard skin strap. And of course, these pieces also have déployant clasp that matches the 18 karat gold, 18 karat white gold material of the case as well. As much as I can make out from that picture, from that still, I like to think that this is the diamond set dial. This is the dial that has brilliant cut diamonds as hour markers. Of course, the standard version had Roman numerals that accompanied the semi-precious stone background. And this is how they were presented in matching cases. This particular set doesn't have it, but I swear I have also seen wallets for the warranty cards that were made of the same color of lizard skin. But yeah, this was very interesting. This is something that I had posted about before, the Daytona Beach collection and Meadow Soprano's watch specifically, but I'm kind of experimenting with a new format where I don't just post the wrist shot or the still, but accompany it with further visuals. So I hope that was more interesting, more informative. Captain, that's from early 2000s. If memory serves, in fact, the Daytona Beach collection, which they released in those 4 different sets, was almost concurrent, I want to say, with the release of the new movement, the caliber 4130, that introduced the in-house self-winding movements to Rolex's sporty chronograph line, and they came out with this set. However, there were, I should say, also examples of the 16519 that had a similar aesthetic, that had semi-precious stone dials, diamond set for the hour markers. I remember seeing those as well. So it's not, these sorts of dials did not come into the realm of precious metal Daytona with the 6-digit series, with the turn of the new millennium, so to speak. But this four-piece set, in so many ways, was much more coherent and much more insistent on that sort of loud extravagance. And this was one of the moments where Rolex doubled down on that kind of presentation for a more commercial production rather than more limited occasion pieces that were either corporate gifts or basically special commissions by extremely privileged clients of the brand. In this case, they paired the turquoise dial with blue, the yellow tinted mother of pearl dial with yellow, pink tinted mother of pearl dial with pink, and the chrysoprase stone dial with green lizard skin leather bands, and they matched those details also with the presentation boxes and the accompanying accessories as well. Hi, Dark Child. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't realize that I had listeners from Ukraine. Greetings to you as well. I hope you are keeping safe. I hope you are keeping well and that your family is protected. So I was saying that I was somewhat repetitive on Instagram lately. So we had Meadow Soprano wearing the Daytona Beach. I'm sorry, I did actually post that. And of course, Robert Downey Jr. putting in his shifts as a privileged ambassador of Gégé Lecoultre, but I'm really happy that they have been changing it up. They put JLC Polaris chronograph when he was visiting Jimmy Kimmel. Who is Jimmy Keller? Jimmy Kimmel about a couple of months ago. More recently, he wore the Reverser Tribute chronograph, I believe both in stainless steel and in pink gold, alternatively. But here he was in the Vanity Fair party that was also sponsored or co-hosted by Saint Laurent. And there he was wearing the tribute chronograph in stainless steel. And he had literally flipped over the chronograph side. And I was thinking that he is quite self-conscious how sexy that watch looks. He's posing with John Hamm, of course. No, no offense, but I wouldn't let John Hamm come that close to me from behind, to be fair. You must have heard the rumors, so you got to keep a safe distance from the guy. But this is a very nice photograph. Joking aside, the caliber 860 that is displayed there is, of course, the descendant of caliber 829, which powered the original 1996 limited edition that was a run of 500 pieces in 18 karat pink gold, with the movement itself rendered in 14 karat pink gold. So a lot of aesthetic elements that were to become quite popular with FP Jaune, for example, this sort of bolted on oversized subdial or off-center dial aesthetic. And of course, the making of movement base plates and bridge plates in precious metal is another aesthetic element that FP Jaune was to adopt. And caliber 829 also doesn't get enough credit, especially when it's compared to Arlan Gonzune's L951-1, because having preceded that movement by 3 years, caliber 829 of Gégé Lecoultre is actually the first in-house integrated chronograph movement of the post-quartz era. It's the first such movement to have been made from scratch after the quartz crisis, which is quite important. Remember, in the 90s, most of the big time players in the horological space, let's think about the big four, the so-called Holy Trinity and Rolex. Rolex was using movements that were built on the base of Zenith caliber 400s, having retired the hand-wound Vajou movements that they were using for the Daytona. Patek Philippe was still building their perpetual calendar chronographs and chronographs on the base of the Nouvelle Lemania CH27. Same thing with Vacheron Constantin, and AP for its part was using the Lemania base as well for very special and interesting experiments, like the tourbillon chronograph, for example, that they presented also in the Royal Oak case, but more widely in their catalog, they were using self-winding chronograph movements that were built on the Frédéric Piguet or at times even Jaeger-LeCoultre blanks. So this is quite interesting. Do I know nice meteorite dial watches? A lot of different brands have meteorite dial watches these days. Dark Child, of course, the independent brand that builds watches only on commission, so to speak, only bespoke watches, Sartori, Billard, they can make any sort of meteorite dial watches with your design elements, your kind of, you can let your imagination run wild. We were the other day we were talking about the Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda 1950. Their slightly oversized dress watch that has some interesting meteorite dial versions. Again, those have been long discontinued, but they are not at all impossible to find on the secondary market. And what I really like about them is also that they use different kinds of galvanic treatments for the colors. So obviously Rolex has all these great meteorite dial watches. The Daytona in the previous generation had them. The white gold GMT Master 2 still has them. But Rolex chooses, possibly for reasons of part aesthetic consistency, which might be an impossible task, but largely durability, they keep treating it in this neutral color. Other brands are a little more experimental, and Parmigiani's Tonda 1950, which has been discontinued and which exists in significantly more limited numbers with meteorite dials, are a great example of more experimental approaches to that, and you can find them on the secondary market. Not every day, not always for a great bargain, but if you're patient, if you take your time, I have no doubt. Last thing I'm gonna share from the Instagram, and I hope you had a chance in the meantime to vote in the poll, because we're going to talk about auctions. We're going to do auction previews. Sotheby's online only fine watches auction that is based in New York is going to close tomorrow. And in fact, I think lots begin to close in less than 10 hours, and that seems to have gotten the most votes, incidentally. So please vote in the poll, and let's see if we can have a more clear result by the end of this particular post. But it seems I'm starting with Sotheby's fine watches. Robert Downey Jr., as you know, has finally won his Oscar, of course, for an actor who has been recognized for his chops for decades now, and for an actor who is seemingly in the third acts of his career, this may have been a little late in coming, but better late than never, as they say. And he seems genuinely happy that he has finally clinched that Academy Award. He has finally checked that box. I know with his drive, probably he'll be looking for the best actor next. But I really like his story, to be honest. I think the way he reinvented himself with the with the superhero movies, making them so popular in the first place, right? With the Iron Man and the entire universe and metaverses that have grown out from it, and the fact that he dared once again to more or less kill himself off and start another chapter in his career. I think it's really brave, and to me quite inspirational, as well as I'm trying to make a similar transition in my career. All 29. Let me know if this is better. Um, I wasn't trying to whisper, but maybe I'm in my, I may have been using my bedroom voice. So maybe I should change my tone. I hope this is better. But this is how Robert Downey Jr. was celebrating the morning after. He's wearing a gold-toned dressing gown, which looks quite eye-catching. He's chilling with a cup of coffee and his Academy Award, his little Oscar statue. And even though Gégé Lecoutre has this particular model in stainless steel as well, with a matching bracelet, I think he finally deserves something that would match the Oscar gold, along with his dressing gown, of course. This is the kind of complication that's near and dear my heart. Um, I think it has an air of the mid-century, and also an air of the 1990s, which is when Gégé Lecoutre was experiencing a revival and repopularization, precisely under the leadership of Günther Blümlein and Harry John Belmont, who wanted the brand to realize the ideal of democratizing complications. And what better way of doing that, of course, by combining these two classic complications between the chronograph and a complete calendar. You can also say, of course, triple date or triple calendar, because in addition to the chronograph, this piece has a pointer date and, of course, two apertures right at 12 o'clock under the brand signature for the day of the week and the month. I actually love the way JLC matches a black dial with pink gold. I think that also looks stunning in the new Tribute chronograph, which has that 18 karat 5N pink gold with a great black dial, like a sunburst black dial that has a certain depth and gradation. And here too, I think the black dial serves as the perfect backdrop in its interplay with the pink gold case. I have to say, I don't mind the red accents either. I think they somehow tie everything together. I don't want to forget, of course, the gorgeous moon phase indicator that peeks from out of the cutout at 6 o'clock as well, surrounded as it is by the pointer dates. Hey, whiskey. I'm actually drinking whiskey today, so it's nice to see you in the chat. The glass is absolutely not proper. It will have to do, when you have to drink, you just drink. Yeah, I have some good scotch with me right now, which I might share later on. Yeah, that was brilliant, wasn't it? I'd like to thank my terrible childhood and the Academy in that order. That was last night at the Oscars. He said that. Yeah, I really, really like this watch. Um, I think it's also a decent enough deal in stainless steel. Let me take a look again. This is the Master Control calendar chronograph. It's quite salty in pink gold, as you can see, 32,500. In stainless steel too, I guess some might protest and wonder if you might not want to go a little further up and take a look at the Polaris Perpetual Calendar, perhaps. Of course, that's a watch with a very different aesthetic and a much more sportier appearance. But of course, you get, I think, a more interesting and, in a sense, more prestigious complication. And of course, you don't get the chronograph in that case. That being said, I think there's something to be said about the pricing of Jaeger-LeCoultre as they have gained a little more recognizability in the mainstream space more recently. And I wonder if they're not getting carried away by that a little bit. Because this kind of pricing may have flown, may have been acceptable at the height of the market, but as everything is dipping and as really the downturn has solidified and become the new normal in the last 2 years by now, I wonder if these prices might not come back to haunt, if these choices might not come back to haunt them, because I think this piece was released just 2 years ago at around $17,000. Same thing can be said about the Polaris Perpetual Calendar. I think it was when it was released. Let's take a look at that as well. It was right at or under $25,000, and now it's $1,100 in stainless steel, and I think that's insane. Um, Again, it's not for me to decide the pricing policies of any particular brand, but to increase about 50% the price of a given model in less than 2 years, that that seems a little excessive to me. Let me know what you think in the chat, but I can't countenance that. I can't accept that. All right, I hope you have all voted by now in the poll, and I hope you have also clicked the like button when you are at it. Let me end that poll. I think Sotheby's won. We talked a little bit about new releases in the beginning. We talked about some of the interesting watches that especially Robert Downey Jr. wore in the last few days as part of the award season, and also in the morning after. And it happened to be Gégé Lecoultre. And now we're going to take a look at some of the auctions that are going on, that have been going on. The season is starting slowly but surely. We're going to do this as we always do. So I'm sending the link in the chat. If you want me to highlight a particular lot, if you want me to talk about anything watch related, at your demand, at your suggestion, please feel free to send it in with a super chat, and I'll be more than happy to shift my attention, to direct my attention to your request, and we will go from there. This is an auction based out of Sotheby's, New York. The lots are going to close in around, or the lots are going to begin closing in about 9 hours and a half. And it is actually online only, so they are gonna close with 1 minute intervals. And as always, there are many interesting pieces. Since our friend Darkchild has been asking about meteorite dials, I will start with the two meteorite dial Rolex pieces that are presented here, that you may have already spotted while I was scrolling down. And then we'll go from there. There are 190 some lots. You're looking at a white gold, sorry, a platinum day date 118206 with a meteorite dial. It's a very interesting aesthetic. It's a very different aesthetic. Almost 20 years old now, from around 2006. With a diamond set. Meteorite dial. And it is also presented on a president's bracelet. As you guys know, the platinum versions of the Rolex Day-Date used to come with this slightly domed, smooth bezel up until 2022, which is when Rolex actually introduced fluting. So nowadays it's becoming even harder to distinguish platinum day-dates from a white gold day-date, but of course there are certain dials like the ice blue dial and previously other oddities or unique dials that have been preserved for the platinum. But beyond that, aesthetically, they're becoming one and the same. Although I think it's still, when you look at day dates from a bygone era, even from 10, 15 years ago or more, of course, seeing the domed bezel is a relatively safe way of telling that you might be in fact looking at a platinum version. This is seemingly a full set. You don't only have the box and papers, but also product literature, the chronometer certificates, the warranty papers, the outer box, and even the hang tags. This piece had a pre-auction estimated value set between 20,000 to 30,000 US dollars. It is currently being bid at 35,000 US. Bezels. Thank you so much, Basil. Love you, man. Thank you for your generous super sticker, $1.99, and thank you for the reminder for the like button, the thumbs up. Thank you so much. Basil is also a member, and he has been a great supporter of this channel, and he has been also brainstorming about quite a bit about a number of issues surrounding the watch market that could be of help to fellow collectors. So hopefully soon, perhaps later this week, he will jump on the platform and talk with us about some of his ideas, and maybe with other people on the panel as well. That would be great, Basil. I look forward to it already. So this was lot 9 for a reference 118206, Rolex Day-Date in platinum with a diamond set meteorite dial from around 2006, with about 9 hours and a half to go. The piece is being bid at 35,000 US dollars. We're sticking to the theme, looking at meteorite dials. Next up is a white gold Rolex Daytona from the same generation as we were exploring not too long ago, when we saw at Daytona Beach with a pink tinted mother of pearl dial on Meadow Soprano's wrist. This is a white gold Daytona also from the same generation, but with a distinctly different aesthetics. Meteorite dial with, I think, a very interesting pattern that gives it a unique appearance. Sometimes this neutral finish, to my eyes, in person, seems washed out. So it's the kind of piece you might actually have to be on the hunt for quite some time, for a while, to get exactly what you want, perhaps, because no two meteorite dials are alike, no two meteorite dials are the same. But I really like this one, and I think this model looks amazing with the red accents. And once again, of course, it is presented with those fixed end links. In this case, on an alligator strap with medium scales, matte alligator strap, and on a proprietary Rolex strap at that. In this case, I don't know if it actually comes with papers. I feel like this is kind of a set put together for presentation more than anything else. I do look back and yearn for these sorts of cherry colored, nicely grained wooden presentation boxes with, with gilt details from Rolex. But in this day and age, I'm not really holding my breath that they will come back. It's a green box and the large green box these days, and that's it. So that's still, I think, a nice touch because you get, again, a period correct outer box and beautifully cherry tinted wooden presentation box that would be appropriate for a precious metal Daytona as well. But beyond that, I think it's been more or less put together. This piece had a pre-auction estimate that was set between $25,000 to $35,000, and with about 9 hours and 30 minutes to go, the current bid stands at 28,000 US dollars. There's an interesting pair. These always intrigue me, the kind of jewelry or accessories that brands produce to match their special designs. And in this case, you have a pair of uh, Nautilus cufflinks Ellipse cufflinks in yellow gold. They seem a little worn, if not worn out necessarily. I think that always adds a very intriguing and even lovable patina to the material, to the gold at least. I can't really say the same thing about the center here. the blue center, as they say. I don't even know what kind of material that is, but it seems that it has started chipping off. So that's not terribly attractive. Nevertheless, lot 2 has been listed with no reserve, and it is being currently bid at 1,900 US dollars with less than 9 hours and 30 minutes to go. Less than 9 hours and 20 minutes to go, in fact. The pre-auction estimate was set between 5,000 to 8,000 US dollars. So I wonder if it is going to come any close to that, but it will sell nevertheless since it was set with no reserve. A more unique example, and perhaps a better preserved one, greets us at lot number 3. This one has a brown center that matches the pink gold presentation, and in fact it is diamond set along that brown center. I think a much more attractive and much more unique example. This piece had an estimate of 5,000 to 8,000 US dollars, and the current bid actually stands at 4,000. Again, a no reserve lots. This is lot number 3 for a pair of Patek Phillips pink gold cufflinks with diamond setting to accentuate that brown center. That is currently being bid at 4,000 US dollars with less than 9 hours and 15 minutes to go. At lot 6, we have a genre of a watch that's becoming more and more popular recently. These are the kind of dress watches with integrated bracelets that come from prestige makers. The example we are looking at is from Patek. A reference 3484 line 2 in yellow gold with an integrated mesh bracelet, a very sleek, very thin dress watch in the style that they call cocktail watch from around 1970. Thank you, Ozzy. Thanks for the reminder. And thank you for your support. Appreciate you. Thumbs up. These kinds of pieces are kind of finding their second wind, so to speak, in this day and age. There was a time where they looked really dated and were quite undesirable among collectors. But for my part, I've always liked these kinds of watches that harken to a time where, essentially these were articles of jewelry for men in this case. And what you get in terms of quality, in terms of presentation, is by no means a lesser product. You're getting an ultra thin Patek Philippe dress watch with an integrated Guerre bracelet. Guerre, as you know, is a bracelet maker that has historic ties to basically every single recognizable brands in the history of Swiss watchmaking. Of course, they are the brands that made Oyster and Jubilee bracelets for Rolex, eventually becoming, in fact, integrated to the brand. But that was a long history along the way. They made bracelets for Universal Genève, they made bracelets for Hoya, they made bracelets for Patek Philippe. And of course, speaking of which, they made the bracelets for that first generation of integrated bracelets, sports chic watches from those three illustrious makers, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, the Patek Philippe Nautilus, and the Vacheron Constantin 222. So this, I think, these kinds of pieces in so many ways, especially when you can find them in good condition, are still to a certain extent undervalued, I would say. If not necessarily from an auction, they can be great buys. Again, I would prize condition over everything. This particular piece is not necessarily enviable, but the price points right now is not too bad. I'm sure there's a reserve price at play, with the estimate set between 7,000 to 14,000 US dollars. The starting bid, which has not been activated just yet, which has not been hit just yet, stands at 6,000 US dollars. That was lot 6 for an integrated dress watch, integrated bracelet dress watch by Patek Philippe. The reference 3484 line 2 in yellow gold. The starting bid stands at 6,000 US dollars, and the lot closes in less than 9 hours and 15 minutes. Feel free to take a look at the lots. They're all 5 pages and more than 190 lots. I'm going to leave you for a moment and take a short break as you check out this Patek Philippe Nautilus reference 3800. All right, we're back. I'm sorry. I took a break and suddenly everyone is gone. So this is the reference 3800. You guys might know that throughout the 80s and even 90s, the reduced sized versions of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak and the Patek Philippe Nautilus were arguably more popular than the original versions, than the original dimensions for which they were designed. And this is the so-called mid-size Nautilus in stainless steel. So the reference number 3800, line 1A, on the integrated bracelets, of course. And in so many ways, it is simply proportionally shrunk down from the dimensions of the jumbo. So the diameter is more around 37, 37 and a half. Rather than the original, which is usually presented at around 72. The piece is a little bit thicker from the original, which was around, I think, 7.5, 7.6. Or no, actually, sorry, I got myself confused a little bit when I was thinking about Royal Oaks in a way. I think the thickness pretty much remains the same. So maybe right around 7.5, same as the original 3700 and 3800 as well. But the diameter is shrunk down to 37 and a half. Honestly, I think to me that makes for a more streamlined and better aesthetic. I'm sure people who actually love the Nautilus design would disagree with that. I'm not a huge fan of the original design to begin with. So to me, this mid-sized, this shrunk down version of the watch is much more interesting and much more likable. It has the original ribbed pattern on the dial with that black and blue gradients color. The piece is from around 1990. And the watch arrives naked, so to speak, no box and papers. In addition to those differences in the dimensions, which might possibly make this watch an attractive alternative to the Nautilus Jumbo, to the reference 3700. This also has a sweep center second hand, the original being built on that ultra thin movement, the base of which also powered the Royal Oak, the JLC 920, simply had two hands, right? So maybe, I know some people like having a second hand on a watch. So 3700s or the original Royal Oak Jumbo reference 5402 might not be for them, whereas 3800s, certain reduced sized versions of the Royal Oak might well be exactly what they want. Of course, 5711 and now 5811, the more modern, the contemporary versions of the Nautilus always come with a sweep center second cent. This is lot 7. The pre-auction estimates was set between 20,000 to 40,000 US dollars, and with a little more than 9 hours left before the hammer, the current bid stands at 32,000 US dollars. Next up, we are looking at another platinum day date. This is actually one of my favorites because it has such a different motif, such an unusual dial pattern for a Rolex overall, for a modern Rolex, let's put it this way. But for a day date in particular, it's like a diagonally placed version of the tapisserie dial that we more often associate with the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. And it has that ice blue color that Rolex preserves exclusively for its platinum models, for its top of the line pieces. This is reference 228206, the Rolex day date in platinum, mounted on a matching president bracelet from a few years ago, from around 2020. It does come with box and papers, as well as promotional material related to the model and the original warranty card, as well as the hang tag. I think in many ways, this is almost militating against so many details that we associate with the day date traditionally. Of course, it is in precious metal. It has all that heft and wrist presence that Rolex's ultimate bracelet watch, the day date, always had. Of course, this is a modern day date in platinum with a 40 millimeter case, 40 millimeters in diameter. So it has even more of that presence and heft we were talking about. But it is in a white metal, so it has the kind of subtlety, that quality of registering under the radar that you might not necessarily expect from a day date. This is not a watch that will be invisible, of course. It would still make a statement, but it wouldn't have to shout that from rooftops. And it has that beautiful ice blue dial, again, that's preserved for exactly these kinds of watches. The diagonal motif, as well as the presence of luminous material on the dial, gives it a slight edge of sportiness that most Rolex day dates don't really have. So I think this makes the 8206 with the diagonal motif, ice blue dial. A bit of a wild card. This piece at lot number 8 had a pre-auction estimate in the range between 20,000 to 30,000 in US dollars, but the bidding has already taken it to $50,000, and there's about 9 hours left on the clock before the end of the auction. So should be interesting. Patek Chris, nice to see you, man, and nice Patek in the avatar there. Hello to you as well. We're looking at the Sotheby's New York Fine Watches auction. This is an online exclusive auction with some 193 lots that are going to begin to close in about 9 hours. You guys remember recently Audemars Piguet had a collaboration with the fashion designer Tamara Ralph that presented us a similar model, a similar Royal concept flying tourbillon that was crafted in 18 karat frosted pink gold. In this case, you're looking at the original version of that flying tourbillon from the Audemars Piguet Royal Concept Collection. This one is in frosted white gold. There's a multi-layered dial that has varying tones of blue. Of course, at the focal point of the watch, sitting at 6 o'clock, is the tourbillon cage for a flying tourbillon escapement. That mirrors that multi-layered design with overlapping circular white gold plates. Of course, there's that unique diamond setting in the tourbillon cage as well. I've never quite grown used to these Royal concept cases. I know they were designed to become something different, of course, expanding perhaps the boundaries of the design, which have already, of course, grown so much since the 1972 introduction, allowing perhaps for more experimental movements and technologies. But for me, I don't know, it has never quite landed. Funny enough, I like this watch in either version, by the way, both in this white gold version, but also in the more recent pink gold Tamara Ralph version. I like it so much more in from the back than I actually like it from the front, which doesn't say much because I absolutely hate it from the front. But nevertheless, you can also understand the whole existence of the Rolex concept as a platform. They were largely invented with Audemars Piguet's realization that they were leaving way too much money on the table for Richard Mille, which was largely, at least at the time, produced in their own facilities in the Complications Workshop, Renault et Papy, that is now completely integrated through Audemars Piguet as APRP. To this day, of course, Audemars Piguet owns a 10% stake in Richard Mille, but I suppose that was not enough. They just had to make Richard Mille looking watches of their own because they were already working for Richard Mille in that particular capacity. So it only made sense for them to follow with their own watches that had a similar appeal. All of that being said, again, I've always liked the frosted gold. That's particular kind of finish that harkens back to the Tuscan artisanal craft that was brought into the world of AP most emphatically with collaborations between Audemars Piguet and Carolina Bucci. I think it looks great on the cases and bracelets. It looks even better on the dials, if you ask me, especially in the neo vintage versions rather than the more recent ones. I also like here again that tourbillon, which is set with 19 brilliant cut diamonds, which I think is a very interesting touch. I like the shades of blue, but all these nice things, all these great things about the watch don't necessarily paint a beautiful holistic picture when they all come together. This is an AP Rolex Concept 26630 BC. The flying tourbillon in frosted white gold from around 2020. The estimated value of the watch is in the range between 150,000 to 250,000 in US dollars. The starting bid is 85,000, but no one has bid on the watch just yet, with about 9 hours to go. We're about halfway through our program. Please don't hesitate to hit the like button. I want to kindly remind you that this is a channel that is completely independent, that has no sponsors, that serves no masters except for you. The channel is at your service. I am at your service, but that also means I'm at the behest of my audience. So this channel lives and survives and thrives with your contributions. You can use the kinds of options that YouTube provides for you, of course, like super chats, which is something great that Bezos has done earlier in this broadcast, super stickers, super thanks that are left in the form of comments if you are listening to this after the broadcast. And of course, you can become a member and avail yourself of all sorts of exclusive content with an archive that increases, that expands day by day. Everything that you see here, you can find even more extensive and expansive form behind that paywall as well. And I think by the end of this month, there's a good chance that more of that archive would migrate to become member exclusive contents, including the archive of live streams. So you might want to keep that in mind and get ahead of it as soon as you can. If you want to contribute in other ways, there are links in the video description for PayPal, for Cash App, and also for Patreon. So feel free to consider those as well. If nothing else, hit the like button. That's for free. And that's actually great help for a small channel like this. If you can spread the word, if you can send the link to other collectors, to fellow watch enthusiasts, would be actually perhaps even more help because it helps me expand the community. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to do, to grow this channel so that we have a larger, a more lively, and a more engaged community that is built around the knowledge of and passion for wristwatches. So if you can help me get there sooner than later, get to that next threshold, let's say 5,000 members, why not? I would be so grateful. With that being said, again, you have the link. You have the link to join the panel if you want. You have the link to explore these lots, the lots from the Sotheby's Fine Watches auction at your pace. And if you find a lot, if you find a watch that you want me to look at more closely, please feel free to send it in. And I would be more than happy to dive in and look at it in some detail. You're looking at lot 20. This is the A-Lang und Söhne chiming watch, Zeitwerk, striking time. It's the Zeitwerk minute repeater in white gold from around 2019. Reference 145029. Zeitwerk is perhaps the most distinctive watch of Lange aesthetically. It is also the ultimate analog watch, the ultimate the ultimate analog watch with the digital display. So it's truly unique with its time bridge design that integrates the two-digit display of the hour and the minutes with an oversized subsidiary dial for the seconds. Of course, that is balanced in the upper half of the dial with a power reserve indicator. And in this case, you also have the two hammers, to say nothing of the gong exposed. So whenever you initiate, whenever you engage the minute repeater, whenever the piece actually chimes the hours and the quarters, you actually see everything in action from the face of the watch. The design, of course, being so unique to Lange, also takes inspiration from their founding aesthetic, because the 5-minute clock that adorns the stage in the Semper Oper in Dresden, in the Dresden Opera House, which was built by the ancestors to the brand's founders, looks very much like this piece. Of course, that is a 5-minute clock. So in that case, the minutes jump in 5-minute intervals. Here you have a wondrous mechanism that has a digital display, which has basically jumping hours and jumping minutes, combined again with those running seconds as part of the time bridge. This is a very power hungry complication, already as the Zeitwerk, with the jumping hour and jumping minutes. Of course, combining that with a chiming watch, with the striking time, it makes things even more interesting. It makes things even more challenging to speak to it from a horological perspective. Here's a look from the back. Again, all the aesthetic elements of our Erlang und Söhne movement is for all to see. That particular alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc that is called German silver, which patinates beautifully over the years, makes up the bridge plates. They're complemented by rubies that are set in gold chaton. The stainless steel screws are heat blued. and set in polished, mirror polished countersinks. You can see the circular graining or the perlage on the base plates and the freehand engraving on the balance cock as well. The piece comes as a full set, as you have just peeked. This is lot 20, Erlang und Söhne. Zeitwerk striking time, reference 1:45:029 in white gold from around 2019. The estimated value of the piece was set in the range between 70,000 to 120,000 US dollars. The current bid stands at 85,000 US dollars. Just to make sure I don't run out of battery for these microphones in the middle of the broadcast, I'm changing from one to the other. So if you have any problems hearing me, feel free to alert me from the chat so I don't embarrass myself for too long. We're gonna again continue the theme. We're gonna continue speaking about Lange. And this is a classic Lange one. From that generation that was still built on movements that were themselves based on gear trains borrowed from Jaeger-LeCoultre, and you can easily tell that when you turn around the watch and look at the movements. And if you see the islands on that 3/4 plate, you're looking at an earlier reference, an earlier version of the Lange one, the reference numbers of which start with 101. Whereas the newer versions have reference numbers that start with 191. This pink gold version is otherwise a classic through and through. I think that's a connection to one of the powerhouses of watchmaking, especially in the later part of the 20th century, is actually a bonus. You have a beautiful silver dial that makes this pink gold piece an ultimate dress watch. The classic dimensions of the Lange one, 38.5 millimeters in diameter and right under 10 millimeters in thickness, should be more around 9.8. It is pink gold, yeah, pink, rose gold, red gold, whatever you want to call it. It's not yellow. Of course, these days people have less resistance to asymmetric dials. But when it was introduced, the Lange one was actually quite daring. I think in so many ways. It was a slow burner as well. But to this day, the Lange one remains the best selling watch by the brand. And I think, as much as I personally prefer Alangonzone in white metal, and therefore a Lange one in white gold or even platinum, I think most people would rather have their dress watch, if they are going to have one, in precious metal. So pink gold or even the yellow gold classic probably makes much more sense. You have the big date indicator at around 10 o'clock. You have the power reserve indicator at around 3 o'clock. And by the side of the crown, of course, you have the seconds on the sub-dial that overlaps with the off-center dial. And that is at around 4 o'clock. And overall, you have all the quintessential elements of the Lange aesthetic with their particular method. There is, after all, some measure of order in this chaos. There is a method to their madness. People often repeat that there's a this is good. There's a beautiful triangle here. If you were to take the point under the hand stack, the center of this guichet, 2-digit date display, and as your third corner, this point under the second hand. And it would go also perfectly right under the indicator for the power reserve as well. And of course, you have that additional pusher at 10 o'clock for quick correction of the date 2, which in and of itself is really a pleasure to operate. Tiff Nadell says, Zeitwerk is my personal favorite. That happens to be the case with most people. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it is their most distinctive design, and that it has one of the most interesting gimmicks in the horological world, right? It is a digital watch with a mechanical heart. It is an analogous watch with a digital display. That's quite amazing, and it's not that it's particularly accessible, but the closest thing that you can have to the Erlangen-Söhne Zeitwerk is probably FP Jean's Vagabond 3, and that's in so many ways much more unattainable and certainly in more limited numbers. Arguably even more interesting and a more advanced watch, but that's an argument we can have another day. All of this makes the Zeitwerk, I think, very, very interesting. Like Tiff Nadal said, really, really like the digital time presentation. I'm much more of a Datograph and Lange 1 guy, honestly, when it comes to Alang und Söhne. But I do appreciate the Zeitwerk. This is a Lange 1 reference 101032 in pink gold with less than 9 hours left on the clock. The piece is currently being bid at 16,000 US dollars. The reserve has been met for lot 21, even though the estimate was much higher, set between 20,000 to 40,000 US dollars. Someone might yet get a decent deal on that Lange 1 in pink gold. Let's take a look at these two examples of one of my favorite contemporary pieces by Patek Philippe. The 5960 has been discontinued for more than a couple of years now. The combination of the annual calendar and a self-winding chronograph with flyback functionality is still represented in the lineup with 5961, which obviously is a little different, having a diamond set bezel. And of course, there is a slightly different version in the 5905, which has a much larger case. I think overall, the 5960, at least for me, was quite the sweet spot in terms of the dimensions, in terms of the larger aesthetics of the watch. I really like the range that this reference number has across the different metals with very unique aesthetic touches that go beyond just swapping the dial color from one material to another. But that again is a conversation for another day, because right now we are looking at lots number 22, which is an example in platinum that combines an annual calendar, which is displayed through 3 openings between 10 and 2 o'clock. Right around 10, you have the day. At 12, you have the date window. And at around 2, you have the display for the month. You have a power reserve indicator right under that date window and above the signature of the brands. And you have a single crosshair style register for the chronograph that indicates the hours, that counts the hours in the most inner circle. And it also has a 60-minute counter, which counts 0 to 30 on the outside and 30 to 60 on the inside. That single register for the chronograph also integrates a day and night indicator in the form of a porthole-like opening. The piece has a subtle amount of luminous material. The leaf-shaped hands are inlaid with superluminova, and there are pips of lume also behind each hour marker. And they are obus-shaped wherever they exist, multifaceted. And I think they blend in beautifully with this silver starburst dial. And even though this is a platinum piece, I think overall the combination of the dial color and the piston-like pushers, the pump pushers, give the watch a slightly sporty feel, I must say. And overall, you have a piece that's quite wearable. And I think very good for the everyday. Of course, some might prefer the stainless steel versions of this watch because of the aesthetic, because they come mounted on a beads of rice style bracelet. But I think the white gold and platinum versions are just as appealing, if not more. And the price point is actually quite similar. This is a 40.5 millimeter platinum case in diameter, and the thickness is right around 13.5, which is quite substantive, but not overbearing. As you can see, this is a self-winding chronograph and an annual calendar. And the chronograph also has flyback functionality, which means that you can reset with the single push of a button. That means you don't have to start, stop, and reset and start again while the chronograph is running. You can just push the reset button and everything will fly back and start running from the beginning automatically. And because this is a column wheel vertical clutch chronograph, you can in fact leave it running and use the centrally deployed chronograph seconds hand as your only second hand. Strange. Anyway, please hit the like button. I don't know sometimes how to respond to these things. I don't even know how these people find me except when they're sent. by rival platforms, but that is the order of the day. These people do want to make sure that, anyway, I'm not going to rage today. It's okay. It's okay. This is lot 22 of the Sotheby's Fine Watches, Sotheby's New York Fine Watches online auction. The lot is going to close in about 8 hours and a half. The current bid stands at 30,000 US dollars, and the estimated value of the watch is around 30,000 to 60,000 US dollars. We have the same watch with a black dial next up. I think the black dial is a little more rare. And that this one, much like the last one, but unlike the last one, comes with box and papers. So it seems to have given this watch an added value. Most certainly. It's a watch from about a decade ago, but I think this is a design, this is a combination of useful, utilitarian complications that Patek has very successfully integrated to their lineup. And I think the 5960P is an amazing watch that today really offers a lot of value on the market, whether you look at it in stainless steel, white gold, pink gold, or platinum. All the variations of the piece are quite attractive and have their own charm. I think with patience and a little bit of navigation of the secondary markets, either by educating yourself or seeking some help from someone like me, you should be able to locate an example that wouldn't break the bank. In this case, things have developed quite quickly, I think. When it comes to lot 23, the pre-auction estimate was set between $40,000 to $60,000. Now, with a little more than 8 hours and a half before the auction concludes, the piece is being bid at $42,000. This is a Patek Philippe annual calendar chronograph watch with the flyback function in platinum, reference 5960P. Lot 23 is being bid at 42,000 US dollars with about 8 hours and a half left on the clock. Exactly, Patek, Chris. Yeah. The black dial platinum and the black dial in stainless steel are quite rare. The black dial in stainless steel is perhaps even more desired. I think that one was produced for only 1 year. Of course, it's very meaningful that they put the 5035s right after the 5960s. The 5960 was introduced for the first time in 2006 for Patek Philippe. It was their way of introducing their first in-house self-winding chronograph movement, which they combined with the annual calendar. In a way, 2006 was also like paying tribute to the golden era of Patek as master of complications when they came out with, let's say, 1518 in 1941, which was the first perpetual calendar chronograph wristwatch in serial production. So Patek then, and also in the 21st century, lived up to their moniker, their calling as producing these kinds of remarkably complicated watches that can still be worn every day and that can be potentially even accessible. And the annual calendar 5035, introduced in 1996, was one such example. Lots 24 and 25 are therefore presenting that model that is literally the first annual calendar reference for Patek Philippe. And Patek Philippe was the first to introduce the annual calendar as a complication. Annual calendar is distinct from what is called complete calendar and triple calendar, which is a kind of calendar watch that you have to basically correct at least 5 times a year, because it doesn't know the difference between the longer months and shorter months. A perpetual calendar, of course, theoretically is a kind of calendar watch because of the particular way in which it's mechanically programmed, can show the correct day, date, month, and time for the rest of the century. The annual calendar makes a compromise between these two general types of calendar watches, and it requires only a single correction per year because it cannot account for the shortest month, February. So you only have to correct your watch on March 1st. This piece has a 3 subdial arrangement. The subdial at 6 is actually a day-night indicator in the form of a 24-hour register. At 6 o'clock, right below that, you have a date window. At 2 o'clock, you have a pointer indication of the month. And at 10 o'clock, you have the day of the week. The Roman numerals, as well as the leaf hands, the feuille hands, are discreetly loomed. Very useful, again, living up to that promise of bringing down complications to a utilitarian level, to a quotidian realm. And you also have the sweep center seconds. This is an example in yellow gold that has gained a warm patina over the years. I think that's very pleasant. Some other collectors might deem this kind of oxidization undesirable, and I understand, but I find it quite charming. The great thing about these kinds of pieces, of course, for Patek, when they come before that 2009 threshold, it means that they still carry the hallmark of Geneva rather than Patek Philippe's own seal. And perhaps because I'm a purist, perhaps because I don't necessarily buy into Patek's own marketing spiel after the introduction of the Patek Philippe seal, after the introduction of their own seal. I always prize a Patek that comes from before 2009 over others. So a 5035 in this kind of condition has also that added appeal, at least for me. This is lot 25 for a Patek Philippe annual calendar in yellow gold, 5035J. The estimated value of the piece was set in the range between $15,000 to $30,000, and the current bid stands at 17,000 US dollars. That was lot 25. Lot 24 was another example of the 5035, another example of the Patek annual calendar in platinum, and this one has a black dial. Patek Chris, thank you for this information. Yes, 5960 line 1A with the black dial was produced for about a year, and 5960P with the black dial you add was also produced for about a year. We're looking at the 5035P in platinum and with the black dial. I think that's a very handsome aesthetic as well. The piece has a coffin style case for its presentation. Also happens to come with a tag, but there are no papers, nor an archival extract. And there's also proprietary Patek tang buckle in matching platinum. This piece comes from around year 2000. As you can see here, the rotor does not impede the view of that hallmark of Geneva that is on one of the bridge plates. Lot 24 is a Patek Philippe annual calendar from that first reference in platinum. So it's a 5035P. This particular example is from around 2000, year 2000. Estimated value of the piece is between 20,000 to 40,000 US dollars. And with less than 8 hours and a half left on the clock, the bidding stands at 26,000 US dollars. We're entering the last hour of the broadcast, so if you haven't done so yet, please hit the like button. If you share the link, it would be great. If you leave a comment, a nice comment or a nasty or vicious one after the end of this broadcast, that would also be great. That's a great way to support the channel. And for a channel of this size, I have to say, it's perhaps the best kind of help, the best kind of support to spread the word, to bring in more people into the fold so that we can have an even bigger and more thriving community of like-minded enthusiasts. At lot 35, we are looking at a very interesting piece. This is a Breguet Marine tourbillon. Perpetual calendar with the equation of time. It also has a retrograde date indicator and a leap year indicator as well. It has a hand guilloche dial, which has a kind of a random wave motif, which is very appetizing, very interesting. In the form of a downward-facing crescent, you have a scale for the date that is indicated with a retrograde hand, and that is styled like an anchor. You have a power reserve indicator that is shown through a cutout at 8 o'clock. You have the equation of time, and also at 10:30 you have an opening for the day of the week, and at 1:30 for the month. That's secondary minute hand, which is a tip that is like a gilt sun, indicates the difference between mean solar time and true solar time in real time. So that's the equation of time indicator. And of course, at 5 o'clock, you have that tourbillon cage, which features a 1-minute tourbillon. The watch overall is based on the extra thin movements, 5377. And this piece carries the reference number 5887. 5887 PT, Breguet Marine, Équation Marchande. The piece comes with its box and papers, and the presentation box for the Breguet Marine actually follows that over-the-top nautical theme. It's kind of styled on its inside like a luxury yacht. It's really something to be seen and experienced, as you can glimpse here, and as you can see more clearly perhaps from this picture of the whole set. The piece comes with both the rubber and leather bands, and I think in fact 2 sets of deployant clasps as well. It's a very cool piece that's at lot 35 has an estimated value that is set between 90,000 to 180,000. And the current bid, with less than 8 hours and a half to go, has already met the reserve and stands at 80,000 US dollars. Thank you, Van Lux. Please do. We're looking at the Sotheby's Fine Watches auction. If you want me to check out any of the other lots, please feel free to send in the lot number with a super chat, and I'll be more than happy to shift gears and address your wants. You guys know that the Breguet Tradition series is one of my absolute favorites. I like them all. You know, the ones that are just with the simple power reserve, the ones with the retrograde seconds, the GMT, the chronograph. I really love it all. That being said, of course, the top of the line tourbillon fusée and chain is probably the most aspirational of them all. Breguet Tradition series were introduced by Nicholas Hayek, by Nick Hayek Sr. in 2005. And it was really a time where haute horlogerie, high horology was really taking off. And the idea of displaying, in fact, foregrounding the mechanical achievements of a watch was really having a moment at the time. So even though this series was introduced in 2005, it really harkened back to some of the pocket watch designs of Abraham Louis Breguet in juxtaposing the display of time on an off-center dial with a somewhat symmetrical layout of the movement components on the base plate of the watch. This particular watch has such an interesting steampunk aesthetic that it was actually chosen by the costume department for Batman versus Superman to be Bruce Wayne's watch. Bruce Wayne, as he was realized by Ben Affleck in this case. If I'm not mistaken, he was wearing the white gold version, sorry, the platinum version, I want to say, of this piece. But you're looking at the pink gold example now. This is the Breguet Tradition Fusée and Chain. Tourbillon, and it has a constant force mechanism that's that again harkens back to a bygone era in watchmaking. And the off-center dial is, in this case, in blackened gold with hand engraved, with a dial that is hand engraved on a rose engine. The power reserve is actually displayed on the barrel drum right there. And the base plate itself has this frosted gilt appearance in this model that once again kind of echoes with the finishing of some pocket watch movements. Quite interesting indeed. And everything else, of course, is quintessential Breguet. With the extended teardrop-shaped lugs, with the case band fluted finely in its entirety, and with the movement given an exhibition through a sapphire caseback. The piece in this case comes with its full set, with the full set of its box and papers, as well as documents. It has been purchased in late April, so just about 2 years ago. And it is today lot 37. This is the Breguet Tradition Fusée and Chain Tourbillon reference 7047 in 18 karat pink gold. The lot is closing in about 8 hours and 20 minutes. The pre-auction estimate was set between 40,000 to 60,000 US dollars. And with the reserve already met, the bid stands at $48,000 for lot 37. Speaking of different versions of the Tradition, here is the GMT reference 7067. Once again in pink gold. This is a little more wearable. I believe the Fusée and Chain is a watch actually that is almost 44 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken, in diameter. Or maybe just 42. I think it's 44. The GMT version is 41. And I think it's quite beautiful. You have the local time with the off-center dial at 12 o'clock, gold dial, silvered, hand engraved on a rose engine, beautifully set up, beautifully bolted in with those heat-blued screws, which have this interplay with the Breguet set of hands for the hour and minutes that are also fashioned in stainless steel and that are also heat-blued. You have a skeletonized dial offset in connection to this local time dial at 7 o'clock in black. That's for reference time. And off the top of my head, if I'm not mistaken, the day-night indicator is actually in relation to the reference time, not local time. And once again, you get that steampunk aesthetic, that exposed display of the movement components, including the balance wheel and the escapement, which I think gives a lively appearance to this watch, a mechanical liveliness, but a dynamism nonetheless. And I think in this case, that anthracite gray aesthetic of the movement finish gives a kind of modern edge to this particular example. I really like it, and I think it's a very unique offering in this category. There are not many watches like the Breguet Tradition period, but especially like the Breguet Tradition GMT. There's also a power reserve indicator that you can glimpse through the exhibition case back when you flip over the watch. And this particular example comes as a full set with the box and papers, and not to mention all kinds of product literature, as well as the outer case as well. That was lot 39, which closes in about 8 hours and 15 minutes. The pre-auction estimate was set between $15,000 and $30,000. And with the reserve met for lot 39, the current bid stands at 17,000 US dollars. I want to see what other interesting pieces I can show you in the 40 minutes that remains. Here's one, and one of my absolute favorites as well. You're looking at lots number 62 by Parmigiani Fleurier. We talked about this. Parmigiani is perhaps going through a rough patch right now, and that might overall spell quite an ominous piece of news for the industry at large. However, over the years, and especially during those years where master watchmaker Michel Parmigiani's fingerprints are more visible in the brand's designs, they have made some beautiful watches, and the Toric series overall was a great example of that. This is the Toric Perpetual Calendar. It has a beautiful dial in anthracite gray with complementary copper/salmon tones. That includes the spear-shaped hands for the hour and minutes, but also the scale for the retrograde date indicator, which is styled like a downward-facing crescent. There's a moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock, a leap year indicator in the form of an opening at 12 o'clock, right above the signature of the brand, which is presented on a plaque. And there are two distinct openings, one for the dates at 4 o'clock and one for the day of the week at 8 o'clock. Sweep center seconds, which has a crescent-shaped counterweight, which coordinates with the red crescent tip of the retrograde hour hand, and the anthracite gray backdrop of the center dial has this fine radial guilloche finish, which adds even more dimensionality to this dial in its slight contrast with the grain brushed, circularly grain brushed outer scale for the dates. It's a beautiful white gold piece with that fluted bezel. The design of the watch integrates elements that can be thought in terms of neoclassical design. After all, the name for the model, Toric, comes from the Doric comes from the base of the Doric style columns that characterize ancient Greek and Roman architecture in the structure of the columns. Here's a peek through the exhibition caseback with a full rotor and oscillating weight in 21 karat gold, which has the brand's distinctive grain d'orge barleycorn guilloche motif, as well as the initials of the brand PF on a plaque. And as you can see, the caseback ring has the same fluted decoration that the bezel has in the front as well. And I believe the crown is capped by a ruby cabochon. This is the Parmigiani Fleurier perpetual calendar with the retrograde date indicator, as well as indicators for the moon phase and the leap year. A 41 millimeter white gold case. Comes with a double folding butterfly style dépliant clasp in matching material. The presentation box is included with the outer packaging, even though the documentation seems to be missing from this package. An interesting detail is, of course, that the piece comes with a proprietary strap from Parmigiani Fleurier, stamped with their logo, and those straps are made by Hermes. This is lot 62 for a Parmigiani Fleurier Toric perpetual calendar in white gold. Estimated value of the piece was set between 18,000 to 36,000 US dollars. The bidding currently stands at $17,000, but the reserve has not been met yet. So we'll see what happens in the time that remains. I have about half an hour more, so I'll probably be able to share with you about half a dozen more watches. If you have any special requests, um, if you have any particular watch related questions, please feel free to share them here. I'll go along with the theme here and go to the previous lots, lot 61. That's also a Parmigiani Fleurier perpetual calendar, but integrating a similar movement. It has a much sportier outlook. This is a Tonda with those distinctive shouldered lugs. The 42 millimeter slightly oversized white gold case is perhaps for that reason made even more prominent due to those stylized lugs. And the transparent sapphire center dial, I think, gives you a very interesting peek onto the calendar wheels that are seemingly very chaotic under the lids, but ultimately in their coordination, in their programmed indication, give you one of the most precise and consistent ways of measuring time, date, day, and month together, to say nothing of course, the indication of the moon phase and the leap year. And of course, the retrograde date indicator as part of a perpetual calendar complication is always much more impressive, always much more delightful to watch, to enjoy, because at the end of the day, at the beginning of each month, it will snap back in unison with not only the day, but also the month as well. Here again, that sporty case is complemented by the design of the hands, which are oversized alpha hands, generously inlaid with luminous material. And there is kind of a lime green accent to that crescent tip of the retrograde date hand, which I think is actually very nice and complementary to this futuristic look of the watch. The moon phase indicator, as you may have already glimpsed, actually gives you the indication of the moon phase in both hemispheres, northern in the lower and southern in the upper indication, or rather northern through the lower opening and southern through the higher one. And overall, again, you have a very interesting design, very classy watch, but with sporty and even iconoclastic demeanor, especially when you think of it within the lineage of this rather highbrow, prestigious complication. This is the Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda Centum perpetual calendar with the retrograde date indicator. The piece has a sapphire center dial, which gives you a look right onto the perpetual calendar module of the movement. And overall, it is a very unusual, if also sporty and casual, implementation of the complication. Lot 61 is currently being bid at 17,000 US dollars with less than 8 hours and 30 minutes left on the clock. The reserve has not yet been met. It would be an interesting one to look forward to. Please hit the like button. We're entering the last stretch of this broadcast. It was a pleasure to be with you as always. Some very cool Patek Philippe pocket watches, time only, double signed, complicated, platinum. They're all quite gorgeous. A number of jewelry pieces from Cartier, Piaget, and even IWC. And Patek. There are a couple of interesting Hoya chronographs, so maybe we should spend some time here. Here's a Hoya Solunograph that was retailed by the American brand Orvis. Orvis is kind of like a outdoorsy brand here. I think kind of the gear that you would need for a hunting slash fishing kind of aesthetic. I want to say they are originally from the Northwest, maybe from Vermont. I think that makes sense. And I know at some point the Hoya chronographs made for Abercrombie and Fitch were all the rage. So the Orvis ones perhaps are going to take their place. This is a reference 2446 SF, the solunograph. And it is actually only signed by Orvis on the dial. This is a chronograph that has a 24-hour indication at 9 o'clock on a subdial at 9 o'clock. And all those familiar aesthetics that we have seen in the Abercrombie and Fitch Seafarer. This is the vintage Hoya chronograph piece. That was retailed by Orvis in a bygone era. The estimated value of the piece at lot 91 was set between 8,000 to 12,000 US dollars. The reserve has been met, and the current bid, with less than 9 hours left on the clock, stands at 8,500 in US dollars. A Hoya solunograph reference 2446 SF, retailed by Orvis circa 1970. Lot 96 is a Hoya Carrera that once belonged to Gary Goss. It's a reference 3647 Sunray DX. The piece comes with all kinds of material that accompanies it, which testifies to its provenance, to its racing provenance. It's a piece that was issued to the Sunray DX racing team, one of perhaps about 12 examples. The dial is accordingly adorned at 6 o'clock with the Sunray DX Motorsports Division logo. Otherwise, this is a very nice example of a 36 millimeter Carrera from 2 register Carrera chronograph from the time period with running seconds at 9 o'clock and a 45 minutes totalizer at 3 o'clock. The piece comes with a Sunray DX logoed Zippo lighter with a number of patches, Gary Goss's name tag, Daytona International Speedway patch, original Yanko Stinger decal, 1967 Daytona Trans Am race day admission ticket and button, and Sunray DX Sports Car Club of America Festival decals as well. The pre-auction estimate was set between 15,000 to 25,000 US dollars. For lot 90, the piece is being currently bid at $22,000 with about 8 hours and 43 minutes left on the clock. At lot 96, we have a root beer GMT Master that has a very similar aesthetic to my piece. Mine is, of course, the transitional reference 16753. This is a 1675. It's an aesthetic that I actually like. I always second guess myself when I see one of these because of the applied coronet. And then I try to console myself since the 16753 has a newer movement that introduced the quickset dates as well. Nevertheless, this is a stunning two-tone expression of Rolex's iconic dual-time watch with that extra hand, with that fourth hand, with that secondary hour hand that serves as a 24-hour time indication and that allows you to track another time zone with the help of the rotational bezel for the 24 hours. In this case, it is a bicolor bezel to distinguish day from night, and it coordinates with that brown dial as well as the gold parts of the watch, the crown and the bezel, not to mention the dial fixtures, and it is in these alternating shades of copper and gold. This particular piece is presented without a bracelet on a calfskin strap with contrast stitching. The yellow gold, especially on the bezel, has patinated or has taken on this warm patina that makes it seem almost like pink gold with the oxidization. Actually, apparently, the watch does come with the bracelets as well. Probably the condition is not quite remarkable, perhaps a little stretchy, hence the presentation by and large on the leather strap instead. But you can see how this golden center links of that bracelet too have that warm patina that gives it a certain pinkish hue. And of course, the original root beer is not only characterized by that brown dial, but also what is called a nipple dial with these conical 18 karat gold fixtures that are filled with luminous material. The pre-auction estimate for lots 96 was 8,000 to 12,000 in US dollars. And with around 8 hours and 45 minutes left on the clock, this Rolex GMT Master Root Beer, reference 1675, is currently being bid at 9,000 US dollars. We have less than 10 minutes left, so please hit the like button. I will discuss maybe 2 or 3 more watches. Ali Reza, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ali Reza is one of the prominent supporters of this channel and member of the channel as well. This is a super chat for $24.09. Question 1. What's your take on Formex? Question 2. Do you think there's any chance that Paul versus Tyson isn't staged? It would seem to me that a 58-year-old, even a 58-year-old Tyson would obliterate that child. Let me actually answer the easier question. I think Father Time beats everyone. It is very impressive still, like you said, to see Mike Tyson in action in those training videos that he posts sometimes. But training videos are training videos. They are largely, how should I say, static. The pads don't hit your back. The heavy bag doesn't hit your back. And yes, the power is the last to go, but your legs, especially, and perhaps even more your knees, and I know this, and I'm sure you know this too, Ali, really start taking the toll on you. And that is more so the case if you have been really active as an athlete, or if you're a heavyset gentleman, or in Tyson's case, both, right? We are talking about a heavyweight boxer after all, even though Tyson was always on the more stubbier, stockier, and compact end of the spectrum when it comes to heavyweights. So all of this is a very long-winded way of saying that an aged Tyson, who is almost 60 years old now, might actually be beat by someone who can punch fairly well. Jake Paul is still a relative novice to the sport, but he has been training quite seriously for some years now, and even though he has rarely fought against a legitimate opponent, and even though there's always a suspicion that there is some amount of staging, if not alleged fixing, to his fights, the guy has power. I mean, he can hit. He can genuinely hit. I don't think he can necessarily knock out Tyson. I think if it is staged at all, it will be actually a fight that goes for the full 10 rounds, maybe. What is it going to be? Is it going to be a 10-round fight? I honestly haven't even looked into it. But if it's a 10-round fight, if it is fixed at all, I think it would go for the yeah, it would go for the full deal. Yeah, I think it's not going to be good. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's really a shame, right? Tyson is a legend. I think the fixes in the matching of the opponents, right? In the sense that I know it is an event. I know the name Tyson means a lot. I know it will bring in the money. I know it will bring in the eyes, between the two of them. This might possibly even break a pay-per-view record. I understand all that, but I think you don't want to beat up on an old man, right? You want to pick opponents of your own size, your own skill, your own age. You have to choose competition correctly if you want people to respect you. And Jake Paul, despite what he keeps saying, has always gone for the opposite, right? He seems to demand respect, but he always makes the choice that one, fattens the lining on his pockets, two, gives him an easy victory. So I think he's going to beat Tyson. Probably not going to stop Tyson, but he's going to beat Tyson, and it's going to make a lot of money, and it's going to be overall shameful, aesthetic, and it's a far cry. It's really a far cry from the kind of boxing that from the kind of stories of boxing, I have to say, that we grew up with, right? Like Larry Holmes crying after beating Muhammad Ali, for example, right? It's like that. That's the kind of ethos, right? That's the feeling that real boxers have, right? If you are put in a position, if an older legend gets between you and a title, between you and greatness, of course you would have to beat that legend, beat that older athlete. But it doesn't give you pleasure. Such an ethos has long left the sport. It is a huge win for Netflix, by the way, Ali, because for the longest time, I thought Netflix wasn't going to do live sports. And in fact, they kind of stood their ground on that and kept saying that we're not going to do live sports. It's not our shtick, like, it's not our focus. We're never going to do it. We focus on, series and docu-series and other kinds of programming around sports perhaps, but not sports. If this is their way of entering that market, it's going to be a tough time for Amazon Prime. It's going to be a tough time for even the Zone, which is much more established. It's going to be very tough competition for ESPN Plus as well. Yeah, if this is their way of entering the market, I think that's the biggest incentive. When it comes to Formex, I think Formex makes some interesting stuff. Honestly, I like the fact that they kind of have that space shtick goings on. Space shtick going on, like, you know, with space mission oriented limited editions and meteorite dials. We were talking about that actually. I'm kind of embarrassed now that their name didn't come to mind when I was talking about it earlier. And I think for the price points, they make pretty serviceable watches. If you tell me what model specifically you were looking at, I can give you a better answer. I can give you a more specific answer. I think by and large they use Celita movements, which, you know, again, as long as there's transparency, as long as the price point reflects the kind of mechanism that is used, I have no problem with that. But overall, I think Formex is like, to me, it's like Seiko Prospex quality in a Swiss-made watch. So if that's your preference, if you would rather have a Swiss watch rather than, say, a Seiko Prospex watch, I think Formex offers very good value. I would put them at the same level as, say, Yema. You know, one maybe slightly above brands like Baltic and Unimatic. I know it's a rather arbitrary classification, and I would rather go, you know, piece by piece. Yeah, let's take a look at that. I think that watch has an interesting aesthetic. I don't know which particular one you had in mind. But honestly, I kind of like this one, the one with pink gold accents and the mesh bracelet. I think you can basically customize the hell out of it too. So that's also part of the charm. I'm having some sort of problem here. Wait, can I? Yeah, I think this is the watch. I can kind of see why you kind of gravitate towards this. I think the case size is an element, the 42 millimeters. I have to say I kind of like it, right? You know, this is the most unique configuration. It has serious water resistance at 300 meters. It has an aesthetic that's, you know, to say it's unique would might be an overstatement, but that's quite proper to its own. I kind of like the balance of the case design, uh, you know, even though uh, people will say I'm being inconsistent because I hate the Nautilus, but I feel like, you know, the all big ears of the Nautilus are much more pronounced, whereas here you have a notch at the 9 o'clock side on the left flank that balances out the crown guards, which I think is a nice aesthetic. I like the interplay between this, like, you know, black sunburst dial and the pink gold accents. I like the mesh bracelets, which has some sort of integration to the case, which is not seamless, but still quite intriguing and efficient, gives the case this sort of robust look. This configuration specifically looks very interesting. I mean, obviously, I think this is the Salida movement. Yeah, SW 330-2 GMT COSC certified. I mean, it's the kind of watch that you get for yourself, right? This is the kind of watch you would wear. You know, maybe your daughter would steal it from you once every so often and eventually completely take off your hands. I can certainly see that happening. Um, but honestly, I can't say anything negative against it. I kind of like the case design. I like the way it actually integrates the mesh bracelet and even the straps. And I like the fact that it's quite recognizable, but still manages to be somehow its own thing. And less than 2300 when all is said and done, that doesn't that doesn't sound so bad to me. And of course, this is color GMT, right? So it's that's something that you should keep in mind. Meaning that you can only independently set the 24-hour hand, the GMT hand, not the local hour hand. But you know, overall, I think it's mostly a matter of preference and compromise when you take the price point into account as well. Because even though people call the flyer or traveler GMT true GMT, I think that's really it's when you actively travel between time zones that it really takes on its meaning. In the sense that when you literally need a handy way of jumping that hour hand, actively changing time zones. When you're using a GMT just to keep track of another time zone, I think the color GMT does the same job. Okay. That being said, I think I will leave it there. Alireza, thank you so much. And thank you, Bezos, for your super sticker as well. You guys have been really generous, and also with your time and presence. All the members of the channel who were here today, everyone who participated in the chats, thank you. Don't forget, we are having another State of the Market with El Professor on Wednesday coming up. But before then, I'll be live at my usual time, again, for about 4 hours, right until or a little past midnight. So happy to be back live streaming with some regularity again, and can't wait to see you tomorrow. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.